bring your own environment culture. They're calling it the BYOE. And so these workers are very opinionated on how they want the office to be structured, since they're now working in a certain manner from the home world. So I wanted to, is this an anomaly? Do you expect more of this? Is this only in the tech space? What's your thoughts on this?
I think that bring your own environment is something that honestly was happening to some degree before the pandemic, because you had a lot of people who were choosing to define where they wanted to work and realizing that if they could be in the environment where they knew they could perform best, whether that was at home, outside in a cafe, um, it, there's this acknowledgement that for some people, being confined to an office space may not be the most optimal situation for them. Maybe
But
they have a long commute to
that's
get
got to
into work.
be specific to generational, don't you think? I would think there's an age factor there.
It is specific to generations, and that those that are more digital first by default have believed that where you specifically are located doesn't necessarily, and it shouldn't have an impact on your effectiveness at work. However, for many of us who've worked for 20 years, we also realize having a level of flexibility is valuable, and that we can also do our work from home or in different environments where you don't necessarily have to be in the office.
You once shared the thought with me that the technology space seems to have a leg up in this in terms of that flexibility, adaptability. You still think
Oh,
that's the case?
definitely. For those of us who've worked in technology too, we've had the ability to work from anywhere to some degree, just because we're so used to having our laptops and needing to move around and be on at any point in time. But knowing that we can connect with our team, and our team also has been more regionally or even globally distributed, we've been used to the fact that not everybody is co-located in one place. So by default, I think we've been more comfortable working with people who aren't in the same location. So if they're not in the same location or not even the same time zone or maybe not even the same country, does that really matter if you're not in your office space? You just need an internet connection.
I think it's not going to be uniformly distributed as to how these companies adopt a digital cultural environment, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, I think no one can have some uniform environment, honestly, right? So each organization has a specific culture. They have a certain structure in which they feel will make them the most successful. I think now it's a matter of figuring out how to adapt and align what fits best with their particular workers and what their goals and objectives are. But to say there's one size fits all doesn't exist anymore.
More than 3/4 of C-suite executives recently surveyed by McKinsey report their core employees, they want them back in the office 3 days a week minimum now. However, in contrast, nearly 3/4 of the 5,000 employees that were polled by McKinsey say they want to be home at least 3 days a week remotely. So there's a gap here.
Yeah, definitely.
What happens? What do you think?
For those who are forced back in, I think you're already seeing some of that. They are choosing to leave and trying to find a place that's a better fit. Or um, honestly, they're putting their foot down saying that, look, we've performed well. We need the flexibility. There's a concern that for whatever reason in their home life, that they need that ability to really ensure that they can stay safe, but yet, they're able to get the job done. But I think the main thing is to force anyone to have to be in a very specific environment anymore when everything has had to be so fluid in the past year is somewhat of a tall order. And if people have been proving that they've been able to perform well and perform better, then to now go all the way back and saying, no, you have to be all co-located in this place, that's the best way we work, isn't necessarily true.
Recent surveys also, this is McKinsey, 40% of workers globally are considering leaving their employer by the end of the year. That's this year. That's in like 9 weeks or whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
There's a piece here also out of PwC, mental health. 84% of CFOs believe their company has successfully addressed employee wellness, but only 31% of employees feel that's the case.
I was going to say, I'm sure the statistics showcase a pretty big gap in what the C-suite perceives and the workers actually truly feel and believe.
So if there's this gap between the C-suite who believes we're hunky-dory and these workers who are saying not even close, what does that speak to for the leadership of these C-suites?
I think, unfortunately, there seems to be a disconnect and that there isn't this unfortunate understanding of the workforce and how they're changing and what they feel they need to be successful. And we're now in an environment where people are expecting leadership to care and to have more empathy for their situation. Nobody wants to be treated as just a worker bee anymore. They want to be treated as individuals, valued contributors that can have a huge impact. I mean, I know you always talk about the importance of empathy in building a relationship with people in any part of your company.
So let's shift the spotlight from the employers to the employee. For the worker bees right now, we've talked in the past about the acquisition of digital skill sets that are now required. A lot of the companies are trying, but let's talk about the onus on the employee at this moment.
Well, I think all those skills, employees are really learning them on their own. They don't always feel that there's enough training provided by the employer to do the best that they can in their job.
But there's a point there, Connie. I don't think it's fair now or better yet, it's not even, you're not giving yourself the best shot if you're only leaning on your employer for that training. Like
Definitely.
It's like healthcare. You better make sure you have enough insurance, right?
I would agree. Well, I think the other piece is that, everybody wants to be constantly learning, or I should say that you have definitely a generation of workers now, those that are definitely digitally native, where they're used to constantly learning and growing because you can, you're always exploring new stuff on the web. And so they realize that they don't want their skills to be dull. There's always new ways to improve processes and efficiencies and new tools to learn, new approaches to learn. They can because there's so much content on the web. They have that optionality to do so. So they're also expecting the employer to provide that. And when they don't, then they're going to go off and search for it themselves. Or if anything, they also have different interests and passions too. So they may be doing their primary job with a company, but maybe they're building skills on the side with their side hustles and augmenting all that there, of which eventually they may pivot. That becomes their full-time thing. Or they bring those skills into the next job, which makes them much more marketable than before.
That's what the workers are doing, right? I mean, this is all the side hustles gone mainstream that we've seen. But
Yeah.
those are the workers. I would argue that that's who the employers want to keep.
I agree too. Absolutely.
But
Those
that's
that
not
are
what's
much
happening.
No.
So you end up at the end of the day with competitive, it's death by 1,000 cuts. The big company that has the people that should have been at superstars are out there competing against it.
Right. Well, those that have those breadth and depth of skills realize that they have so much to contribute. They have a lot to add. They also realize there are different options for them. And therefore, they're going to be more proactive and look for different opportunities because they see how they can apply these really compelling breadth of skills in a different way.